Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Marissa Weldon. I am the Creative Arts Director here at Believers Christian Church, and I am so excited to be here with you tonight. Our live stream will begin shortly. As a staff and a leadership team, we have been praying and seeking God on what our next steps are. As we all know, we are growing very quickly and seeing life change happening in our community every weekend, and we cannot wait to share with you the direction that God is sending us when it comes to our building. If at any point during the live stream you have questions about what Pastor Phil is sharing with you tonight, please send him an email at bccbuilding24@gmail.com. And don't worry, that email will be on display for you throughout the entirety of the live stream. Again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We'll begin in just 5 minutes.
thank you for carving out time to be here with us tonight. And for those of you who are watching live, appreciate sharing this evening with you. And those that are watching later, again, thank you for your continued support. Love what God is doing here in our midst and what his plans are for us in the immediate and the near future. I want to acknowledge all of our leaders, all 25 of our leadership team and elders. They're the real heroes. They make it happen. They're building teams. They're helping us to serve people on the weekends and to disciple people in breakout groups and small groups and men's ministries and everything that's happening. It's because of this great leadership team and elders that I'm surrounded by. And then I want to give a shout out to our board of directors who are watching also. They're joining us from all over the country. Pastor Lee Armstrong, who is our vice president of the board of directors. We've got Doug Minus, who is our also on our board of directors. He's our secretary and treasurer. And then we've got in Central Texas, Alan Piper, and in Oklahoma, Seth Swindoll. So on behalf of the board of directors, our leadership team, and Believers Church, I'm excited to talk to you tonight about some things that we're going to go over, review. We're going to talk about where we're at, and I want to talk about where we're going. And before we go into where we've been, I want to share with you one of the most important lessons that I've learned over the last 12 years, and it's simply this. We need to keep our eyes on Jesus, not the methods. We need to keep our eyes on Jesus, not the methods, meaning faith is our part. Faith is what we do. Faith is how we respond. How God does a thing, that's up to him. And so my pitch to you tonight has been the pitch that I have been pitching for nearly 12 and a half years, is this. Let's just keep our eyes on the source, and we'll leave it to him to guide. He's the one leading, we follow. And so that's true for our lives in church world. That's true for our lives in our home worlds, in our business worlds, in our parachurch ministry. So we want to keep our eyes on Jesus. We just trust him, and then he reveals. And as we have gone through this journey, we've got testimony after testimony of God's faithfulness, and that's what we're going to continue to do, and that is my commitment to you as we talk about building and expansions. So building and expansions for us has been an integral part of our history, the history from the very beginning of things changing. Just when the dust seems to settle, we're knocking down walls. We're expanding our territory, and it's part of the routine of what we've been doing here at Believers. It has required all of us to be courageous. Courageous to step out when you can't see all the details. Courageous to begin small while believing big. Or as Dr. King used to say, faith is taking the first step even when you can't see the whole staircase. So I thank you, I commend you to my church family and those that have been on the journey for many years and those who have just joined us. Thank you for being growth-minded. Thank you for being others-focused. And when we talk about growth and growth-mindedness, it's not just about bigger venues. It's never been the goal to have big venues. These venues are just tools to be used to help us minister the gospel, to connect people who are far from God, to connect with the heart of God. For those of us that are on a journey, that we would be growing in our maturity and our experiences with God. So it's got to be a growth mindset. None of us want to be stuck in the mud. None of us want to stand still. I don't believe that in the core of who we are. And so it does take courage to keep moving forward and keep allowing room for our table to get bigger so that more people can sit around the table with us. Some of you have heard these stories and some of the accounts of our history. So bear with me, but there are a certain number of you that aren't as familiar with how we began. And like I started with, our primary purpose is to follow Jesus, not the methods. And so I'll say that from the very beginning, in the summer of 2011, when we started a Bible study, just a handful of people that were hungry for God, that wanted to learn more, grow more. That's what I thought the end game was when the Lord asked me to start a Bible study. And in short time, he began to speak to Becky and I's heart about starting a church. I say that because it wasn't in my mind to be a church planter. In fact, if you pin me down, I still won't commit to saying I'm a church planter. I'm a pastor, but if you were to ask me my plan, I wanted to step into an existing church. But it wasn't God's plan. And so some of you know the story all the way back to the beginning of where we started, when God opened the door for us to purchase a 150-year-old building in the metropolitan area of Eagle, Michigan. I say that jokingly because the population of the village is 109. not the place that dreams are made of in my mind as a young person or an aspiring minister that I wanted to start, but God knew what I didn't know. And so in 2011, a small handful of us, just 8 committed people, purchased our first building for $90,000. And because of your continued faithfulness and your generosity, we were able to pay that building off in just 2 years' time. And in that momentum, we knew that God was doing something special in our church. We began to grow from 1 service to 2 and then into 3. So we continued that momentum by putting away money as a building fund, knowing that God was going to somehow open up something for us, and we wanted to be prepared. And so the opportunity for us to buy the 25 acres in Eagle became available. We had $100,000 saved at that point, and we borrowed $58,000 to purchase the land. We thought this would be the next placement of our church. We thought we would build there. But as you'll notice on the screen in front of you, we were able to pay that loan back in the first 2 months. And then moving forward, our church continued to grow. Still not clear as to how we were going to expand our building, but this is what we did know. Our children's ministry was growing, and we needed to create space. And so our offices got turned into children's space, and our food pantry was expanding. So we moved out, and a group of us moved down the road, and that opened up the door for us to buy the administration building. The administration building that is now home to our food pantry. And if you didn't know this, we fed more than 5,500 people last year out of that food pantry and gave away nearly 210,000 pounds of food. Outstanding. Thank you, church, for being so generous and supportive. We also have our chapel service in there, and of course, all of our administration team and staff work from that space. You'll notice on the graphic that it says that we purchased that building for $268,000. That was a scary step for me. For those of you that were with us at that time, we were aiming to buy a 24 by 24 garage, one block down from our little colonial 150-year-old church. And we were going to spend $30,000 on that expansion. And when the Lord began to speak to my heart about this building, I got a word from God that said, there's future in that building. And so we moved forward, and instead of spending $30,000, we stepped into this much larger expansion. At that point, the most expensive thing that we'd ever done. And you can see that we bought that in 2017. And by God's grace, your provision and the consistency that this church gets behind God's vision, we were able to pay that building off in 18 months. The church continued to grow. We continued to add services in our little building. And we couldn't have known that God calling us to buy the building there on Wright Road, that he was setting us up to purchase the industrial building across the road. And I've learned this too. You can't connect the dots by looking forward, but you can by looking back. And I can see how God was setting us up to get us right here. Now, that 268 was a big number for us as a church and as a team. And it really began to freak me out. And I was really genuinely scared at the idea of buying a more than $500,000 building. And so I wrestled with it, and our team wrestled with it, and our leaders wrestled with it. And I did something that I'm a little embarrassed about, because it's not the kind of man of faith that I want to be. I said, Lord, I need you to send me a prophet. I need you to send me a word. And I made a commitment to God that day in my scared prayer. I won't even tell anyone that I've made this prayer. I won't tell my wife. I'm not going to go after people and try to solicit an answer from them. I'm going to trust you, and I need to hear a word from you. Months went by, and some of you know the story. Someone that I met for the very first time interrupted me during a meal, and they gave me a word from God, and they said, does that mean anything to you? And I said, absolutely does, and I, for the first time, shared it. And that lady prophesied over me and said, I see you standing next to a new building. It's like a brighter lighthouse than you stand by now. Does that mean anything to you? And I knew in my heart that God had answered that prayer. And so we moved forward, and we were able to purchase the industrial building for $550,000. We started renovation in 2020, not knowing what would hit the world. COVID hit and shut down the expansion process for a little while. But we were able, by God's favor, to continue to move forward with all of the renovations to our building, and we moved into this building in September of 2020. You can see on the graphic on the screen that we were able to pay cash for all the renovations of this building because of the preparation and the people sowing, our church sowing into this project. Well, 2 years had gone by. We had gone from one service to two. We had launched a Monday night service. That was our third. And now we're into four. And that fall, we prayerfully asked the church, hey, let's go after this mortgage. Let's all, as a church family, pray and ask God to put a number on our hearts personally. We called it our best gift. And so we sought God together, each household, on, God, what would be my best gift? What do you want the McKinneys? And you fill in your name. And then we had this one outdoor tent meeting. Some of you remember the gathering. We called it our best gift weekend. And on that weekend, we received the largest single offering that we'd ever seen at Believers. At our best gift collection, we received more than $259,000. That allowed us to pay the mortgage off on this building in 2 years' time, with also giving us a surplus and positioning us to be able to plan for what God would do next. And so this has just been an absolutely extraordinary story. I love to share it, and I could go into all kinds of cool little details, but I promised to keep this down to 30 minutes, and I'm going to keep my word on that. So moving forward, our building fund, though we've not ever committed or put out a pledge system saying, hey, would you all pledge and get behind this? Many of you, since that time we paid the building off in 22, have continued to give and contribute to our building fund. Plus, we've also been partners or participants as our leadership team, putting money aside and budgeting for it. And that building fund has now increased to $310,000. Actually, just over 310 and some change. And so that's where we sit right now. And as we have been committing to you that we're walking this out, when I say we, our leadership team and our board of directors, walking this out, how do we move forward? What do we need to expand the facility that we're in? So we went back to our architect and employed him to draw up an expansion that would be incremental. Our goal was to give us some additional space while finding the best value. Well, as you might know, in that time frame, from the time we paid our building off in 22 up till today, the prices of materials and just about everything in this world has gone up. And so when they came back with the drawing, the price tag on that first sketch, that first revision, was $1 million. And the $1 million project didn't really give us that big of an expansion. We got together, our elders and leaders, and we poured over the drawings, and we talked about how we were branching into a pretty significant number. I mean, keep in mind, we bought the building and renovated it for $1 million, and now we're just going to add on to the building for $1 million. We wanted to make sure if we're going to get into that six-figure mark, are we doing the sufficient changes that don't just set us up for knocking down walls again within a few months? And we all unanimously agreed that it wasn't sufficient. And so let's go back. So I was assigned the task of going back to our architect and asking him, what do we need to do a sufficient expansion to actually last us for longer than just a few months? And it took some time to get that put together. Once those drawings were finished, the architect met with some builders, and the quotes began to come in. And I'll show you a picture of what was proposed. This was revision 2. You'll notice on your screen from left to right, the building gets knocked out on both ends. The commons area is approximately 2.5 times larger than it is right now. You'll see that there's larger bathrooms. All the ladies said amen. There's larger bathrooms with a direct access to them from the commons area. You'll notice that the auditorium is knocked out the other direction and nearly doubles in size. It's in this drawing, it's set up with a stage moved into a center of the building with 299 chairs in that particular space. And then the children's area is reconfigured and laid out to better suit our children's ministry, or at least help create some additional space for them. The price tag on this project here was $2.1 million. And that's a significant number for anybody. The building is a significant expansion. A couple of challenges that we had to walk through, a couple of things that we had to discuss and pray about. Number one, praying about the dollar amount. As you already saw, we don't have $2 million. We would have to borrow. We have a few 100,000 that gives us some things to work with. Another challenge that I don't think we saw coming was how long it would take to expand this building. If we were to evacuate this building, giving the builders the ability to do full access demolition and expansion at the same time, it's an estimated 6 to 8 months of renovation while we're out of the building. And that presents a whole new challenge. Where does our church meet for 6 to 8 months? Where do we go? How do we collect? How do we gather? How do we do ministry? And so these are the decisions that our board of directors and our 25 leaders and elders have been seeking God on. And this is what I want to share with you. My primary responsibility here as the pastor of Believers, it might surprise you to hear me say it's not just being a good theologian. My primary responsibility or the best benefit that I bring isn't just the longevity or my pedigree of ministry, because there are people in our midst. In fact, there are people who go to our church that have done ministry longer than me. In fact, there are people that I know I'm in relationship with who have better understanding of the depths of Scripture. The very best thing that I believe that God put in my heart and my responsibility for this church from the beginning was my willingness to hear from heaven and the courage to respond. I'll go back personally. I was in a very secure corporate job. And when the Lord put it on my heart, the Lord called me to pastor a church. And so I stepped into that. When we started the church, I guess I joked, but not joked, I would have never picked Eagle, Michigan. In fact, I wouldn't have picked Michigan. I'm asking God to send me someplace like smoking hot. God, send me where there's palm trees. I mean, that's just being real, right? This is where, if I'm picking the way, if I'm choosing the way, but God knew what he was up to. And so my reason for showing you the history of where we started, the buildings that we purchased, and how God moved us, because every time we were willing to listen to God and be courageous to move, even without knowing every single detail, we have watched God do absolutely amazing things. And God has called me to be courageous again in this hour. This time, very different. Because in the past, I have been the primary voice of emphatically saying go, while a large voice or a large amount of voices are saying wait. And this time, I'm the one saying wait, even though I have a lot of voices that are saying go. I don't know exactly what God's doing in this. I'll tell you this. There's nobody at Believers who wants a larger building than this guy. I want all the building. I want all the tools. I want all of this space. So it's not a matter of what I want. What I do want is what God wants. And I was unable to secure peace on this. And I have petitioned God. I have sat with our leaders and our elders. I have discussed this at length with our board of directors. And unanimously, we all agree that now is not the time to do the expansion on this building. Now, I think that it's in our future. And God knows what he's doing. That excites me. I'm really excited because I've got a history that tells me he knows what I don't know. And if we just will trust him and take incremental steps along the way. But here is what we have proposed. This is the direction that we believe that God has given us, and I'm super excited to share with you. I'm going to put a slide up here, an overview of our property. You'll notice at the edge of our parking lot, near our garage where we park our golf cart, is 2 red boxes. These 2 red boxes are space holders in this drawing, indicating 2 external buildings that we are having currently made. These are classroom-style buildings that will come and be placed at the end of the parking lot. These will allow us, each one of these buildings is just under 1,000 square feet. So one of these buildings is going to be dedicated to our youth ministry, and the other building is going to be a multi-purpose building. All of the external ministries and people trying to figure out where do we meet, whether it's our euchre group or our couples group, our men's ministry, people who are just looking for a space to gather, we will have that available. Now, I know 2,000 square feet might not sound like a lot, but think about this. The building I'm standing in right now is just about 75 or 7,600 square feet. So those two buildings are touching close to a third of the overall space. And it's right here on our property. This is going to be an opportunity for us to not just do a Band-Aid. Though they are units being made and then they will be delivered and installed here, these are assets. This is an opportunity for us to make an improvement to our campus and not just do something that's a Band-Aid that gets us by. We want to serve God with excellence, and we believe that we have partnered with the right manufacturer and we've partnered with the right man who's building these for us. The good news is we're going to pay cash for it all. We're not going to go into debt over it. We're going to still be in a position where we are looking to the future, and we're trusting as God provides for this, and that when these buildings get delivered somewhere around June or July, because of the preparation to water, electrical, and the buildings being made, we will then give you further updates as we get closer, and we'll have a ribbon cutting, and we'll celebrate what's going on there. But so I just want to thank you. This is the update. This is where we're going. This is the incremental step that we believe, and I can confidently say to you tonight that this is where God is leading us. And I want to have the courage to follow him in these incremental steps while we still trust him. He knows we need more space. Our church continues to grow. People's lives are still being transformed. We're seeing people connect with Jesus for the first time. And this is an opportunity for us just to have ministry space that's even outside the weekend experience. As Marissa had already let you know, the email address has been going across the screen. We're wide open to any questions that you might have. Submit the questions to that email, and we will do our best to either answer them directly or I'll come back on and do another live event. Thank you, everyone, for your faithfulness. Thank you for carving out time, whether you're watching live or later, and I appreciate your support. Have a great day.